I found a letter in my mailbox about a loan in my name, but I had never taken out a loan. Welcome to your new personal line of credit, it read, cheerful as a greeting card. The number on the page pulsed like a heartbeat. I dialed from the porch, the kettle hissing inside. Mrs. Hart? The woman asked after the security questions. Yes, the application was filled out online. The email address on file ends in .Carter. Preferred contact, Emily Carter. Emily is my daughter-in-law. My email ends in .net, I said, folding the letter so that it crumpled under my thumb. And I don't want Emily associated with my money. There was a pause, and then the keys clicked softly. The electronic signature matches your name, and a copy of your driver's license has been downloaded. I don't keep my license on the computer, I said. Could you read me your home address? She read mine, then a new phone number I didn't recognize. If you think this is a scam, we could open a case, she suggested carefully. I thanked her, hung up, and drove the 3 streets to my son's house. I turned off the stove and drove the 3 streets. The living room smelled of new leather. The huge TV still had the film on it, as if it had been fresh. Emily opened the door with a look of surprise too quick to be true. Mom, how sweet. Where's Michael? I asked. He came down the stairs in his socks, looking from my face to the letter in my hand. Mom, let's talk calmly. Calmly has nothing to do with it, I said, handing him the page. Why is Emily listed as my preferred contact for a loan I never took out? Emily crossed her arms. It's just a temporary move, for a month or 2. Your credit is improving. We were going to tell you signed for me? My voice was even, which surprised even me. We signed for us, she corrected, as if I'd mixed up the pronouns and not the law. This is family. We'll pay for everything. Michael was looking at the TV, not at me. Good rate, he muttered. How could my son stand here and let his wife turn my name into currency? I set the phone face down on the counter for him to sign in and walk closer. I raised you on envelopes and honest bills, I said quietly. You know who I am? They nodded in relief, mistaking gentleness for surrender. They didn't notice me touching the corner of Emily's driver's license in my purse as I reached for a napkin. They didn't see me studying the printer in the hallway or the stack of pre-approved proposals on my desk. They didn't remember that I'd spent 30 years squeezing every penny out of hospital bills and that patience was like a knife's edge. The first warning sign wasn't a letter, but silence. 2 months ago, my gas bill hadn't arrived. I thought it was the mail. Then the drugstore said my automatic payment hadn't gone through, which rarely happened. I shrugged it off. Old bones creak, and so does the payment system. The next week, I noticed the small brass door of the mailbox open like a mouth. Nothing inside. Across the street, Mrs. Alvarez waved at me from her roses. Does your mail come early these days? I guess so, I said, and closed the door. When I took my hand away, the hinges creaked with a thin, unpleasant sound. That night, as I lay awake, I remembered something else. Emily had asked for copies of our family photos last Christmas. She stood by my scanner, humming to herself, while Michael brought another container out of the garage. Look at you 2 at the fair, she said, tapping a blue ribbon on a photo of my late husband. What a beautiful couple. The scanner lid creaked. A piece of plastic flashed by. I convinced myself it was a receipt. When the loan letter arrived in my name and the cheerful welcome, the creak turned into the click of a lock somewhere inside me. I called. I went to my son. I asked where he'd learned to turn my signature into a favor. After I left them that day, I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I went home and made a list on a yellow legal pad. I have always believed in lists. They save their minds from the wave and lay out the facts on the dry sand where they can be seen one by one. Freeze the credit. Fraud alerts. Banks, bureaus, file a police report, paper trail. Call the creditor's fraud department again. Ask for a direct line to the investigator. Secure mail, P.O. box, change of delivery address. Lawyer, tell Diana everything. Collect evidence, speak calmly, write down dates, record calls. Don't warn them. In the hospital accounting department, you learn a special discipline. Numbers don't argue. They just stand there and wait to be read correctly. I read the situation like a book. Debits, credits, missed entries. I started with the post office. There, an employee offered the informed delivery service. Daily letters with photos of incoming envelopes. I signed up. At first, nothing changed. "Mrs. Alvarez," I asked, "have you seen anyone by my mailbox lately?" "Just the delivery van," she answered. Then she paused. "And your daughter-in-law?" "Twice, maybe." She waved. "Said you asked her to pick up a package so it wouldn't get stolen." Her face softened. "I didn't want to worry you." "You didn't," I said. "You helped." I called the postal inspector and opened a case. Then I drove to Diana's office. She has been my attorney since my husband died. She had just watered her fern. Droplets clung to the leaves like little glass ornaments. "They use my name for a line of credit," I said plainly. "I want to place everything I own inside a wall, with a door only I can open. A revocable trust," she replied, opening a file. "Will rest the house inside it by the end of the week, and your accounts. And I want to name a successor trustee not related to me." I looked out of her window at the courthouse clock. "No one with my last name signs my life again." Diana nodded. "You always were the good kind of stubborn." Next, banking. The fraud investigator at the lender called me back, a man named Charles, whose voice carried the dry patience of someone who has seen the same trick played 1,000 ways. He confirmed what the first clerk told me. Online application, my name, my address, Emily as the preferred contact, and a scan of my driver's license. "Whoever did this had your license image," he said. "That's usually taken from a purse, a phone photo, or a scan." "I don't store mine digitally," I answered. "I do have a scanner. My daughter-in-law used it over the holidays." "Keep that scanner," he said gently. "Do you have any way to record conversations?" "Yes," I said, glancing at my phone, "and I know exactly when to press the button." Over the next 2 weeks, I became a quiet storm. I changed every password. I froze my credit at all 3 bureaus, then set fraud alerts. I visited my bank in person and spoke to the manager, a woman with silver hair and a careful smile. We set a password for in-branch transactions, a phrase only I would remember. I told her I wanted to be called for any activity, however small, that touched my profile. "Is everything all right?" she asked. "It will be," I said. "I am adjusting the locks." Meanwhile, I played dumb with Michael and Emily. I answered their texts about the grandchildren. I sent Emily a recipe for lemon bars when she asked. When she called to ask if I needed anything from the warehouse store, I said, "Maybe printer paper." I ran low after the holidays. I wanted to see if she would flinch. "I'll drop some off," she said brightly. "We have plenty." That afternoon, she arrived with a bulk pack of paper and stood in my kitchen like a neighbor doing a kindness. "Michael will stop by this weekend," she added. "He'll check your smoke detectors. You know, just in case." "In case of what?" I asked. "In case you forget," she answered lightly, and then she laughed as if she had made a good joke. After she left, I examined the pack. The top ream had a small tear, a slip of yellow dust in the fold, toner dust. My mind, trained on small things that grow teeth, filed it away. The second crack came through a plastic card. A department store added me as a secondary card holder without my consent. I discovered the new account because Charles called. Mrs. Hart, I think your case is larger than one loan, he said. 2 inquiries hit your file today. 1 was declined. 1 approved. A store card. First purchase? A leather sectional. How convenient, I said. Their living room smells new. We are building a file, he said. The bank can coordinate with law enforcement, but you're the complainant. Would you consider an in-person meeting next week? You, me, a detective, and the store's loss prevention. Yes, I said, but I want to choose the room. We can do that, he said. Bring any evidence you have. Evidence. That night, I opened my old sewing box and took out the magnifying loupe my husband used for fly tying. I fed Emily's printer paper into my machine and printed a recipe. Then I took a sheet she had used the week before to write a grocery list. Under the loupe, faint constellations of yellow dots emerged, barely visible to unaided eyes. I had read once that some color printers embed microdots, serial number, date, time, on printed pages. The patterns differed between my print and hers. It was a small thing, but small things build chains. I pulled my scanner from the shelf. I remembered Emily humming at Christmas, the scanner lid flashing. I opened the software. In the recent documents list, there was a PDF named DLH. I clicked it. An image filled my screen. My license, front and back. The timestamp was December 24th, 2:17 p.m. The blood in my ears made a hollow sound. I printed it on her paper. Then I opened my phone. The recording from the day I confronted them sat in a hidden folder. I listened to Emily say, "It's just a bridge," and to Michael say, "It's a good rate." I saved the file twice, then a third time on a flash drive with a small brass key. I slept with the yellow pad on my nightstand, not for comfort, but for order. In the morning, I added 2 new lines. Inform delivery images. Print daily. Ask Mrs. Alvarez for her doorbell footage. She obliged. We watched together at her kitchen table while her terrier snored under my chair. On the screen, the date stamped cleanly, Emily approached my mailbox in a blue jacket, glancing over her shoulder. She reached in, withdrew the stack, and slid something into her tote. 2 days later, the same motion. "I should have told you sooner," Mrs. Alvarez whispered. "You are telling me now," I said, and I squeezed her hand. A detective named Reed sat across from me at the bank meeting the following week. He was in his 50s, square-shouldered, a face that had seen every excuse. Charles reviewed the file. The store's loss prevention manager brought printouts of transactions, the sectional, a set of monogrammed towels, a bracelet purchased online at 2:09 a.m., shipped to a pickup locker near Michael's office. Reed listened, then looked at me. "You want to press charges?" "I want the truth," I said. "The charges will follow it." We set a second meeting for Friday with Emily and Michael present. "Ask them to come," Reed said. "Tell them the bank needs to verify details before they release funds." "They'll come," I said. "They like to handle logistics." On Thursday night, my phone rang. It was Emily. "We can swing by tomorrow," she said. "Do you want me to pick you up?" "I'll meet you there," I answered. "There's construction on Main." Friday morning, I dressed like I always do when I need long patience. Navy skirt, the cardigan with the firm cuffs, low shoes. I put the flash drive and printed pages in a folder, added Mrs. Alvarez's video stills, and tucked the loupe into my pocket like a talisman. When I arrived, Charles and Reed were already in the small conference room. Emily and Michael came late. Emily's face shone with a light spray of perfume. Michael's jaw had a nick where he had cut himself shaving. Charles began, polite, a banker accustomed to speaking at the edge of a cliff without naming the drop. "Thank you for meeting." We've discovered a few inconsistencies in the application attached to Mrs. Hart's line of credit. Emily leaned forward. We can help with any details. Reed turned over a paper. Who completed this online form? It was a team effort, Emily said brightly. My mother helps with tech too. She smiled at me as if we were partners. Reed's voice didn't move. Who uploaded the driver's license? Michael's eyes ticked to Emily. It must have autofilled, he said. I slid the printed license across the table. This is my license. This print came from my scanner on your paper. See these dots? I handed Reed the loop. Your department likely knows what they are. He did. He lifted the loop, studied the yellow galaxy, and nodded once. I found this file on my computer, I continued. Time-stamped Christmas Eve. You were at my house, Emily. Humming. She opened her mouth, closed it. I was scanning photos for the family tree, she said, and even she heard how weak it sounded. Reed placed another paper on the table, a still image from Mrs. Alvarez's camera. It showed Emily's hand inside my mailbox. Mail theft is federal, he said. Identity theft is state. You both are in a tight corner. Michael's face went gray. Emily, he whispered. She recovered first. We were going to pay it back, she said quickly. We just needed a bridge. The boutique, Reed looked at Michael. The boutique? Michael rubbed his temple. Emily's shop needs a seasonal inventory push, he muttered. We were upside down. I thought we could float it. You floated it with my name, I said. Emily's chin lifted. We kept you safe. This is the moment when a certain kind of woman tells herself it's not worth it, that peace is better than conflict, that family is an altar you bleed on until your knees give out. I have been that woman in other rooms. Not this one. Reed's question to me was simple. Do you want to proceed? Yes, I said, but I don't want him handcuffed in front of his children. Reed understood. We can stagger the actions. He looked at Michael. You will receive a formal notice. Cooperate and you may avoid the worst of it. Your wife, he glanced at Emily, her actions are more direct. Emily's eyes burned. You would do this to us? You did this to me, I answered. They left the room separated by 10 inches and a ditch. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days later, an envelope thicker than the loan letter arrived by certified mail. Petition for temporary guardianship, filed by Michael and Emily. Attached, an evaluation form signed by a clinic I had never visited, stating that my memory had declined significantly and recommending oversight of daily living activities. I sat at my kitchen table and held the paper like a dead bird. The hearing date was set for the following Tuesday. I drove to the clinic. The doctor whose name crowned the fake evaluation had a real office and a real receptionist who checked a real schedule. She shook her head. We've never seen you, she said, and we didn't sign this. Could your signature be lifted from another document? I asked. She sighed. It's happened. File a report. She leaned in. And document everything. I called Diana from the parking lot. They are coming straight through the front door, I said. We will be there waiting, she replied. We'll get a neuropsych evaluation today. I know a woman who moves mountains by dusk. I sat in a long, bright room with a kind-eyed specialist who asked me to draw clocks and remember word lists. The questions were thorough, without being cruel. When we finished, she rested her hand on my file and said, Your mind is a well-organized house. See, someone has been trying to switch the labels on the drawers. The judge on Tuesday wore a robe and the face of someone who has learned not to be surprised by anything people do to each other when money is nearby. Michael sat on one side of the aisle. Emily sat next to him, with her hands folded. Diana placed our stack on the table. the loan letter, the recordings, the printed license with microdots, Mrs. Alvarez's stills, the real doctor's statement, the neuropsych evaluation. Emily spoke about safety and falls. She used the word forgetful twice. Michael's lawyer, a smooth man who could sell sand in a storm, said guardianship was temporary, a kindness. Diana stood and told the court the kind of truth that does not need adjectives. When she played the recording of Emily saying, "We signed for us," I watched the judge's eyes sharpen. When Diana placed the faux evaluation next to the real doctor's letter, the judge's mouth became a thin line. The petition was denied. The judge used words like bad faith and possible fraud and referred the matter to the district attorney. We walked out into the hard sunlight. Michael caught up to me on the steps. "Mom," he said, as if we were walking out of a high school concert again, as if we could return to the parking lot and eat ice cream on the curb. "What do you need from me?" I asked. The words were steady. The feeling underneath them was fire through a grate. He swallowed. "Emily didn't mean—" "She meant exactly what she signed," I cut in. "So did you." He stood there, hollowed out. "I don't know how to fix this." "You start by telling the truth," I said. "All of it." We met at my dining table that evening. He brought a notebook. He had a habit, since he was a boy, of smoothing the pages with his palm. He did it 3 times before he started to speak. "The boutique wasn't the start," he said. "That was the patch. The start was my private book of business at the bank. I made some bad loans under pressure. They weren't bad on paper, but the borrowers were friends of friends. When the market turned last year, they fell behind. I tried to mask it while they caught up. Emily suggested a short-term line of credit to bridge. She said we'd pay it before anyone noticed. She had access to your mail from picking up packages. At Christmas," he looked at his hands, "she scanned your license." "Did you consider asking me for help?" I asked. "You would have told me no," he said. "I might have," I conceded. "But it would have been honest." He exhaled. "There's more. Her brother used your name for a cell phone account last spring. Small, but it dinged your file. We paid it when the collection agency called. I told her never again. Then the boutique fell behind." It became again, "What else?" I asked. "If there is a floor, lay it." He spoke like a man removing slivers. He told me about late nights at the office. He told me about Emily coaching him to use the word temporary as if it were medicine. He told me about the guardianship petition drafted by a cheap attorney whose card he found online. He told me that he had lied to himself, telling his reflection he was being a good son. "When did you stop hearing yourself?" I asked softly. He stared at the lemon cake plate, empty except for crumbs. "When Dad died," he said finally, "there was no one left to be disappointed in me except you." So I hid. "We are all children, in some rooms." I put my hand over his. "I am disappointed," I said, and the words stabbed both of us. "But I am not finished with you." He took a breath that sounded like someone surfacing after a dive. "I'll go to the bank and confess," he said. "I'll face the board. I'll cooperate with the investigation. I'll separate finances from Emily's, at least for now." "Not at least," I said. "Completely." A week later, Emily was charged with identity theft and mail theft. Her brother was arrested for his part in the phone account scheme. Michael kept his job while the bank reviewed his performance. He moved into a small rental near the office with a mattress on the floor and a folding table. He came to my house every Sunday, not for forgiveness, but for the steady act of telling the truth out loud. We went over budgets like we used to go over homework. I made him write down every creditor, every due date. He called each one. He set up a payment plan with the store card company for the leather sectional. The bracelet went back in a padded envelope with a tracking number and a tight apology. I moved the house into the trust. I switched to a locking mailbox and a P.O. box for anything that mattered. I made a notebook of passwords that lives in Diana's safe. I updated my will and removed Michael as the executor, placing that responsibility with Diana and a local trust company. I added a letter of intent that began, "I am not fragile, but one day I will be. Believe my past self." The quiet after the storm was not empty. It hummed with the work that comes after survival. The calls, the forms, the quiet satisfaction of watching a new habit grow muscle. I let myself feel what I had not let myself feel before. Shaken, yes, and angry, but also something else that surprised me. Relief. There is a special peace in catching a hand that reached for your throat and closing your own fingers around the wrist, not to break it, but to move it away. The bank called me first now. When a suspicious transaction flagged my file, a woman named Nora would phone and say, "Mrs. Hart, did you try to open a credit line with Sun Valley Furniture?" I would say no, and she would smile into the line, and we would both feel the world tilt back into place by 1 degree. One evening in late summer, the district attorney invited me to read a victim impact statement. I sat on a wooden bench in a courtroom that smelled faintly of old books and lemon oil, and told the judge what it felt like to see my name turned into a tool. I did not use words that bled. I used words that filed clean edges. "I am 72 years old," I said. "I am not confused. I make lemon cake at dawn. I pay my bills. I plant tulips in the fall because I believe in spring. When my daughter-in-law took my license, she stole from the same hand that spooned soup into her children's mouths. When my son let her, he cut the palm of that hand. I have bandaged it. It will heal, Emily." Stared at her lap the whole time. When the judge pronounced sentence, probation, restitution, community service, mandatory financial counseling, she nodded once. She did not look at me. The boutique closed. A for-lease sign went up with its own tired optimism. Michael's bank, to my surprise, stood by him after the internal review. They placed him on probation with supervision, transferred him to a branch where there was less pressure to perform, and assigned him a mentor, a man in his 60s who wore old suits and told him the truth without perfume. The grandchildren came over on Tuesdays. We cooked together. I put them in charge of stirring. Once the older one, Lily, asked where Emily had gone. I told her that sometimes adults make mistakes, and the most important thing after a mistake is what they do next. She nodded as if I had told her the weather. In October, I held a family dinner. No candles, just roast chicken, potatoes, and the kind of apples that snap when you bite them. Michael arrived early to set the table. He looked tired, but the kind of tired that comes from honest work. "Mom," he said, tying an apron on like a truce flag, "the board offered me the chance to teach a financial literacy class at the community center. They said it would be good for me, for all of us." "Teach them what you learned the hard way," I said. "Start with how to say no to the people you love when they ask you to do a wrong thing for a right-sounding reason." He laughed once, a sound with edges. "That's a long chapter." "Good," I said. "Make it longer." We ate, and for the first time in months, the chairs around the table felt like they belonged where they were. When everyone left, I washed the dishes and laid out a clean sheet on the dining table, my yellow pad on top. I drew a line down the center. Left side, what had been taken. Right side, what had been returned. On the left, trust misplaced, time, some savings eaten by letters and fees. On the right, my name, my house, my balance sheet, the respect of a son trying to grow back into a man. Was I kind through all of it? Number, was I just? I tried. I have learned that justice without kindness can make you sharp enough to cut yourself. I have also learned that kindness without justice is how you bleed to death, while smiling. A week later, and I walked to the mailbox, I saw a young woman pause in front of my house and read the number above the door. She held a stack of envelopes. "Excuse me," she said, embarrassed. "Is this 1216? "It is," I said. "I'm new on the route," she explained, handing me the stack. "I'll get it right." "I know you will," I said. I watched her walk on, careful not to open any door that wasn't hers. The last thing I did was something I would have called petty in another life. I hosted a yard sale. I set an old metal box on a card table with a handwritten sign. Office supplies. Inside the loop, a stack of printer paper in a plastic wrapper, and a used color printer Emily had left in my garage ages ago when she upgraded. I priced it at $10. A man in a red cap bought it for $8. He lifted it with a grunt and said, "You sure you don't want more for this?" "I'm done with it," I said. When he drove away, I swept the table clean and wiped the dust. A small ritual for a world where even paper can tell on you. On my next birthday, Michael came to the door with flowers, not papers. He stood in my kitchen and lit the candles. "Make a wish," he said. I looked at my son and said the first thing that came to mind. "No." "Let's make a plan," he laughed, and we cut the cake. It is still possible, after the kind of betrayals that rearrange your face, to build a life that looks like your own. It requires a steady hand, a sharp eye, and the resolve to push the pen back across the table when someone hands it to you, with a smile that does not reach their eyes. Months later, Charles called to say the lender had closed my case. "We keep an alert on your file for another year," he said. "If anything moves, we call you first." I thanked him. After we hung up, I poured tea, walked to the porch, and watched the street hold its quiet, the way a bowl holds fruit. The mailbox door didn't squeal anymore. The hinges were oiled. The lock clicked cleanly. There is a particular kind of freedom in hearing your own name and knowing, absolutely, that it belongs to you. I have it now, and if anyone tries to borrow it again, they will find. I kept one thing from that day they slid the pen toward me.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.